Whether you love the Canadian Navy or not, one thing you've got to applaud about them is their never-say-die attitude. We've lost count of the times they should have been rendered obsolete, yet they keep coming back again and again. This is the chronicle of the Canadian Navy after the Transformation era, and how the forces maintained their stance as a global power on the seas. You don't want to miss this. Say what you will about the First Gulf War, but its aftermath led to a monumental mentality shift for the Canadian forces. For the first time in Canadian military history, a major conflict was defined not by the involvement of land forces, but by their exclusion. This trend upended the Canadian Navy's traditional role, which had been focused on open-sea anti-submarine warfare in the subarctic wars of the Atlantic and Pacific. Instead, the Navy now faced the challenge of fighting airborne threats in the confined and tropical waters of a completely different environment. With the Soviets gone, the Canadian Navy had to introspect. What does a naval force do when its primary enemy disappears? For the Canadian Navy, it meant shifting gears from Cold War anti-submarine warfare to a broader, more adaptable role. Instead of hunting submarines, it began tackling peacekeeping missions, disaster relief, and maritime security. However, this wasn't a smooth transition. Budget cuts hit hard, aging ships became liabilities, and the Navy had to make tough calls, like retiring its Restigouche-class destroyers. Yet through these challenges, the Navy stood strong. The Halifax-class frigates, which were commissioned in the late 90s, replaced older destroyers with advanced capabilities. They were the Navy's crown jewels. Proof that Canada was serious about maintaining its status as a maritime giant in a rapidly changing world. Additionally, the Canadian Navy retired its Oberon-class submarines and brought in the Victoria-class from the UK, though the subs themselves faced early hiccups. Okay, so remember when we told you the Canadian Navy changed its methods to reflect the changing nature of global threats? With the end of the Cold War, traditional naval priorities such as large-scale anti-submarine operations gave way to multinational roles. One notable example was Operation Apollo from 2001 to 2003, where Canadian naval forces supported the US-led coalition during the War on Terror. Canada deployed its treasured frigates and supply ships to the Arabian Sea, ensuring the enforcement of maritime blockades and security patrols. And contrary to early expeditions, the modernized destroyers and frigates performed excellently. Immediately after Iqua and Charlottetown arrived in the Arabian Sea in November 2001, the Canadian Task Group was assigned the close escort of the US Navy amphibious ready groups operating close inshore off Pakistan, including the direct tactical control of US Navy Aegis destroyers, a rare signal of US naval trust in an ally. By January 2002, during the peak of the initial phase, 6 Canadian warships, representing 1/3 of the surface fleet, were deployed in the region. The second phase kicked off when Canada's Princess Patricia's Light Infantry Brigade Group replaced US Marine operations in Kandahar. Then the focus shifted to hunting down fleeing leaders of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Speaking of the latter, let's circle back to the beginning. On September 11, 2001, 19 Al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked 4 US airlines. 2 struck New York City's World Trade Center towers, 1 hit the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and 1 crashed in Pennsylvania. The attacks were deadly. Up to 2,986 people lost their lives, including 265 on the planes, 2,599 at the World Trade Center, and 125 at the Pentagon. The international reaction was immediate. NATO invoked Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty for the first time ever, which declared an attack on one member was an attack on all. Allied nations, including Canada, pledged military forces. At first, the attackers were unidentified, but it quickly became evident that Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda was behind it. In support was the Taliban, who had seized control in Afghanistan during a prolonged civil war. Al-Qaeda operated its main bases and training camps there. Supported by US intelligence and special operations forces, airstrikes targeting the Taliban's air defenses and military facilities began on October 7th to pressure the regime to surrender bin Laden and, if unsuccessful, to dismantle their rule. At sea, coalition warships secured the Arabian Gulf and Indian Ocean, disrupting terrorist escape and supply routes through interdiction and leadership operations. Part of Canada's support to the US was the dispatch of its forces through Operation Noble Eagle, as well as some ships. One of them in particular was the HMCS Iqua, a notable destroyer in the Canadian Navy. Serving as the lead ship of the Iqua-class destroyers, she was launched in 1970 and commissioned in 1972. But don't let her age fool you, though. The Iroquois featured a unique design tailored to anti-submarine warfare, boasting advanced sonar systems and helicopter facilities. At first, the ship's primary armament consisted of Mark 46 torpedoes, 6 M2 Browning machine guns, and Sea Sparrow missile launchers for air defense. However, significant upgrades in the 1990s under the Tribal-class upgrade and modernization project revamped many of her capabilities. She was fitted with state-of-the-art radar systems, enhanced electronic warfare suites, and the addition of Harpoon surface-to-surface missiles. Though most of her service history came before the dawn of the 21st century, one of Iroquois' biggest moments was her participation in Operation Apollo in 2001. As part of Canada's coalition campaign against terrorism following the 9/11 attacks, Iroquois patrolled the Arabian Sea, protected Allied vessels, conducted surveillance, and ensured victory on multiple fronts. She even served in place of the Fredericton due to her flagship accommodations and better communications equipment. Though her performance in Operation Apollo was relatively successful, Iroquois faced notable challenges during her service, including wear and tear from extended deployments. She was later decommissioned and sadly broken up for scrap, marking the end of an era for this flagship destroyer. Up next, though, is the HMCS Halifax. Ordered by the Canadian Forces in 1977 to replace the aging St. Laurent, Restigouche, Mackenzie, and Annapolis classes of destroyer escorts, which were all tasked with anti-submarine warfare, the Halifax was one of the first ships to truly reflect the changing long-term strategy of the Canadian Navy during the transformation era. She was designed as a general-purpose warship with a particular focus on anti-submarine capabilities. Commissioned in 1992, the Halifax-class ships were slightly larger than the preceding Iroquois-class destroyers, displacing 4,750 tons and stretching 134.65 meters in length. She was also powered by a combined diesel or gas CODOG propulsion system that allowed her to reach a maximum speed of 29 knots with an impressive range of 7,000 nautical miles at cruising speed. Finally, seeing how she reflected the changing long-term strategy of the Canadian Navy, one of the key features of the Halifax-class ships is its robust anti-submarine warfare suite. Contemporary designs and tweaks may make this sound average, but back then, not a lot of vessels had hull-mounted sonar, a tower array sonar system, and Mark 46 torpedoes launched from twin Mark 32 tubes. The Halifax-class ships were originally equipped with CH-124 Sea King helicopters, working alongside seaboard sensors to detect and neutralize submarines at long range. They featured a bear trap system on the helicopter deck, enabling helicopter operations in rough seas. And for close-range anti-submarine defense, the ships are armed with Mark 46 torpedoes, launched from twin Mark 32 Mod 9 torpedo tubes near the helicopter hangar. While for anti-ship missions, the Halifax is equipped with RGM-84 Harpoon Block 1C missiles in 2 quadruple launch tubes located between the funnel and the helicopter hangar. Their main gun, a 57mm Bofors Mark II, is capable of firing 2.4 kilogram shells at 220 rounds per minute, with a range exceeding 17 kilometers. By the mid-2000s, technological advancements and changing naval threats necessitated significant upgrades under the Halifax-class modernization, HCM, and frigate equipment life extension, FELIX, programs. The obsolete Sea Sparrow system was replaced with the evolved Sea Sparrow missile, and the ship's radar systems were upgraded to include the advanced Thales Smart S Mk2 and Saab Saros 200 radars. The frigate was also reconfigured to accommodate the CH-148 Cyclone helicopter, thus replacing the aging Sea King. Similarly to the Iroquois, the HMCS Halifax performed well during Operation Apollo as part of Canada's contribution to the international campaign against terrorism post 9/11. Initially, Halifax set sail from its namesake port on August 15, 2001, to join Stena Forlant, but after the September 11th attacks, the ship was redirected on October 8, 2001, to sail the North Arabian Gulf and join the coalition warships. Over the following 2 years, 15 Canadian warships, including the Halifax, partook in Operation Apollo. Their responsibilities ranged from leadership in maritime interdiction operations to safeguarding high-value warships like aircraft carriers and amphibious assault ships, as well as performing fleet replenishment tasks. The Halifax particularly performed leadership roles in maritime interdiction operations and escorted high-value warships like aircraft carriers. Then we have the HMCS Charlottetown, another ship in the Halifax class. In 1997, Charlottetown made history as the first Canadian warship to set sail under the Confederation Bridge, and later took part in the U.S. naval exercises. Then, in February of the following year, the vessel joined Stanley-Forland, where it replaced its sister ship, Toronto. In January 2001, HMCS Charlottetown embarked on a critical mission to the Persian Gulf, joining the USS Harry S. Truman carrier battle group. Though the operation was focused on enforcing sanctions against Iraq, it didn't take long for Charlottetown to be part of Canada's involvement in the war in Afghanistan. Alongside Iqua and Preserver, the task force departed Halifax, Nova Scotia on October 17, 2001, arriving in the region on November 20th. Once there, Charlottetown escorted United States Marine Corps troop transports near Pakistan as part of a U.S. amphibious ready group. Following its return to Halifax, the ship continued its operational excellence and was later called up in 2008 to intercept a big narcotics shipment near Pakistan waters. A dhow carrying 4 tons of hashish was seized, with the vessel and its crew handed over to the Pakistan Coast Guard. Finally, we've got the HMCS Protector, one of our favorite Canadian vessels in recent years. Despite its primary recognition for its humanitarian missions, Protector also played a significant role in wartime operations, including Operation Friction and Operation Apollo in the Persian Gulf, the latter of which marked the Royal Canadian Navy's largest deployment since the Korean War. Over 6 months, Protector covered more than 50,000 nautical miles, delivering over 150,000 barrels of fuel and 390 pallets of dry goods to coalition ships in the region. With a length of 171.9 meters and a width of 23.2 meters, Protector was a significant presence on the seas, capable of displacing up to 24,700 tons when fully loaded. And yes, she was powered by 2 Babcock and Wilcox boilers and a General Electric steam turbine, allowing her to reach a top speed of 20 knots. Though she was primarily designed to supply fuel, ammunition, and other essential resources, Protector was outfitted with defense systems, such as the Phalanx CIWS, for close-range protection and decoy systems like the AN/SLQ-25 Nixie to counter torpedo threats. At build, Protector was initially armed with a twin 3-inch 50 caliber gun, which was later replaced by 2 Phalanx CIWS mounts for its Persian Gulf deployment. Additionally, temporary armaments like Bofors 40mm guns, machine guns, and portable missile systems were also included. The ship also carried CH-124 Sea King helicopters equipped with Mark 46 torpedoes and 7.62mm machine guns for additional defense, with a 365-man crew, including air detachment personnel operating CH-124 Sea King helicopters. It's safe to say Protector easily underscored Canada's naval operations for decades. She participated in RIMPAC again in 2004, along with Algonquin and Regina, was deployed to East Timor as part of the Australian-led Interfet peacekeeping task force at the dawn of the millennium, and helped reconstruct a police academy in Dili during their deployment in support of Interfet. Name one Canadian vessel at the time that was as ambidextrous. Yeah, we'll wait. Looking back, the Canadian Navy's transformation era concluded much as it started, with reduced operational capacity expected to persist for years. But if history is any guide, when faced with unforeseen challenges, the Canadian Navy is sure somehow to rise to the occasion, and we'll be here to uncover their chronicles time and time again. If you enjoyed learning about this savory chapter in Canada's resilient naval history, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. But why stop there? Explore our channel for more intriguing exposés into naval history and technology. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.